Morning, everybody. Fox News alert now. The White House apparently bending to some of this pressure on the border matter. The president will travel to Texas on Wednesday, tomorrow, for a fundraising trip, and now saying he's willing to sit down with the governor of Texas, Rick Perry, who's been very critical so far, to talk about the wave of illegals coming across the border. We have not heard from Governor Perry's office. We're waiting on that response. I'm Bill Hemmers. We get going here in America's Newsroom today. How you doing?
Well, good morning. I'm doing good. How you doing?
Great.
Doing well. Good morning, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum. So this concession comes after Governor Perry said that he wanted more than just a handshake on the tarmac when the president came to town. Fox News now has obtained a letter from senior advisor Valerie Jarrett to Governor Perry, and it says this: the president would welcome a meeting with you while he's in Texas. In addition, he asked me to invite you to join him for a meeting to discuss the situation on the border with faith leaders and local elected officials in Dallas on Wednesday.
However, still, we have no plans for the president to actually go to the border and see what's happening there firsthand. Stephen Hayes, firsthand senior writer, Weekly Standard, and a Fox News contributor now with me. Stephen, good morning. This story seems to be changing. In what sense? In what way?
Well, it's changing a little bit. Yesterday, you had a declaration from the White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest that the president wasn't concerned about the optics of the issue, about the optics of going to the border. And you're now seeing at least that the White House is concerned enough to take this meeting with Governor Perry and sit down and attempt to have some kind of a substantive discussion about potentially a solution to the problem.
And maybe when you hear comments like this from a Democratic congressman whose region is on the border in Texas that's getting the influx of illegals, and he's talking this way about the president in the White House.
I'm sure that President Bush thought the same thing, that he could just look at everything from up in the sky, and that he owned it for a long time. So I hope this doesn't become the Katrina moment for President Obama, saying that he doesn't need to come to the border. He should come down.
Is that what they're hearing now in Washington?
Yeah, look, they may be hearing. Certainly that's been a lot of the public discussion of it. I, for one, don't think that going to the border is terribly important for President Obama. I mean, he needs to basically make a decision. What matters is what he decides to do on the substance of the issue, not whether he engages in a photo op or goes and shakes hands or takes the scene in at the border. He needs to make a substantive decision. There's not really any question about what the problem involves. I think it's just a matter here of the president finally making a decision that he's put off for too long.
There's a request apparently for billions of dollars that apparently is coming soon. What's that money for? What will it do? I mean, is that the policy you see developing here?
Yeah, it appears that the money at this point will be overwhelmingly used to care and process the people coming in rather than an attempt to deport them. Now, defenders of the president would say, look, the money has to be spent that way because that's what the Wilberforce law requires. You have to process these folks coming in from Central American countries that are not Mexico in order to comply with the law. Others would say, look, the president has disregarded the law in so many other areas. Why does he feel like he has to enforce it in precisely to the letter of the law in this particular instance? It's because he wants to.
Back to Governor Perry, because he will be a focus for the next several days. He went on Sunday Talk Television and said, you know, I wrote a letter in 2010, never heard a word. I wrote a letter in 2014, never heard a word. And what he said was that the White House is either inept or it does not have the will to change anything. Strong language.
Very strong language, but I think this actually, I think, gives us a window on just how badly mishandled this entire immigration issue has been by President Obama and his allies. Governor Rick Perry is not a restrictionist on immigration. Remember, during the 2012 presidential election, he was often viewed as sort of the most welcoming, the most left-leaning on immigration issues broadly. He was beat up by fellow Republicans for being that way. So for President Obama and his allies to have not only lost Rick Perry, but to have lost Rick Perry and gotten him so ginned up on this issue, I think speaks to just how badly this has gotten out of control.
That's an interesting
for the Democrats.
Steve, thanks. Stephen Hayes leading our coverage there out of Washington. A lot to talk about throughout the day on this. Thank you, Steve. Here's Martha.
Thanks, Bill.
With more. You bet.
Well, meanwhile, you've got another plane filled with illegal immigrants landing in San Diego late yesterday, moving thousands of women and children from the overwhelmed Texas border as they push deeper into the country and try to find places where they can process these people in California. Many of the people were supposed to go to Murrieta, California, but you've seen what's happening there. They're not welcome there, and the protests in the past few days have stopped the buses from getting to the immigration center there. It's a mess, basically. Will Carr joins us now live from Murrieta. Murrieta. So, Will, do they expect more protesters to that area or other areas in California today?
Well, good morning, Martha, and we are expecting more immigration protesters and supporters today, and they're going to be here to see if any more buses try to come to this federal processing facility. Yesterday, we didn't see any buses, but we did see several hundred people show up through the course of the day. There wasn't any violence, but at times, both groups did get very heated. They started shouting obscenities at each other, and both sides say that they plan to be here as long as it takes.
Absolutely. I'll be here tomorrow. I'll be here tonight. I'll be here whenever they need me until I have to go home and work my 2 jobs to support myself and to probably end up having to pay for these illegal aliens.
We say that we pride ourselves on being American, but we have to be part of America by doing your citizen duty, which is we have to care.
Immigration supporters like that say that it would be inhumane not to try to help these immigrants. On the other side, though, protesters here in Murrieta say that their biggest concern is if the immigrants are brought to this facility. It's really a short-term housing facility, and they fear that after they're processed, they'll be released into their community. Martha.
Yeah. Well, history shows that that's generally what happens. So, Will, is there any idea of whether or not more planes are headed to California today?
Well, we had the plane land in San Diego yesterday. There were reports that the immigrants were taken to a facility about 10 minutes south of San Diego. The local paper there is reporting that some of those immigrants were already processed and released into the local community, agreeing that they would show back up at a later date. Now, critics say that's not going to happen. So far, we've been seeing these planes come to Southern California about once every 3 days, but the local leaders here in Murrieta are very quick to point out that they're getting no information from federal authorities, so they really don't know if more planes or buses are planning to come today, tomorrow, or any point in the future.
Yeah,
Martha.
good point. We talked to the mayor yesterday, and he said he hadn't been told that they were coming in the first place, so I doubt that anyone's keeping them posted on future landings that are coming in the next few days. Well, thank you very much. We'll see you later.
Also, the number of children coming across the border growing exponentially in the last couple of years. In 2011, ICE agents nabbed just under 16,000 unaccompanied minors. In 2012, that number jumped to more than 24,000. By last year, it was nearly 40,000 children. And in a 9-month span, last October to June of this year, more than 52,000 children have come here illegally, and those are just the ones we know of. Extraordinary numbers.
You know, your heart breaks. You look at these children sleeping under Red Cross paper blankets, and they are in a tough situation. But the surrounding politics and how they got there is a huge part of what is trying to be worked out in Washington and across the country. So what do you think? How do we get to an answer here? Is a roundtable discussion with faith leaders and local officials and Rick Perry going to start us on a path to reform here? Send us a tweet at Bill Hemmer, at Martha McCallum. We're going to share some of those thoughts as they come in. We're looking at them throughout the show, and we'll put some of them up as we finish.